So thank you for attending our second class of Riverside History, 90 Years. This one is a special one. We've got a guest speaker. But before I introduce him, many of you already know him. Again, if anybody is new here, I'm Diane Russo. I am the director of the archives at Riverside. Vince, if you want to pop on for a second and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vince. I'm the archivist here at Riverside.
Okay,
Great to
I
see you
can't
guys.
see him.
So, yeah.
So should everybody mute themselves now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you. So Vince and I will be co-teaching this class for the next 6 weeks. This is week 2. It's an 8-week altogether. And as I mentioned, as you can probably see on the screen, I hope you can all see it. Our guest speaker today is Mace Anderson. Our topic is the art and architecture of the Riverside Church. And when we decided to do this particular class session, I thought there was nobody better to bring in than Mace. He has been with the Riverside Church for many years. He'll say hello to you all in a bit, and his expertise in art and architecture is amazing. It's really great to talk to him about these sorts of things. He helps the archives on numerous occasions, always teaching me things that I don't know and I've never heard before. So I think having one of our own Riversiders to present this was the best bet. So Mace, if you want to unmute yourself really briefly and just say hi to everyone, and then we'll jump to the presentation.
Oh, here I am. What do I? Anyway, can you all hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure how many folks are out there. I know my fan club is here. So I just want to thank Diane and Vince for giving me this opportunity. We tour guides, Marilyn Mitchell and Rosella, which I guess I'll mention in a minute on tape. You know, this is one of the jobs that we love to do. There are many jobs we have to do that we do, but this one jobs we love to do. And so, yeah, I've been here about 40 years and this is my sweet spot. That's all I'll say. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Okay, so initially we had envisioned this as being an actual tour of the building. That clearly can't happen, so we've put it in Zoom format for you. So we're gonna have a couple of videos that we'll play. They're not very long, there are a few clips, and then we'll have a PowerPoint in which Mace will speak on each image and topic. So I'm gonna start the video now. If you can all mute yourself, I will mute myself as well, and then we'll get going.
Hi everyone, my name is Mace Anderson. I'm a longtime Riversider and I'm really
Hey Diane, we lost his audio there it stopped.
Right after he said his name.
Okay.
Hi everyone,
Can you hear it?
My name is Mace Anderson. I'm a longtime Riversider and I'm really thrilled and proud to have been asked by Diane Russo, our director of the archives, to participate in this educational piece celebrating our 90th anniversary. As you all know, we are in a different state of affairs than when Diane asked me, because I had planned to do a live tour on site for everyone, but the rest is history. And so we're gonna do it virtually, and I'll be chatting, I guess, on Zoom, and we're gonna do the best we can. Just a few shout outs. I'm a tour guide. I like to be called a docent, but then I looked up what that means, and it means tour guide. So That's what I am. And I want to give shout outs to my colleagues, Rosella Ferguson and Marilyn Mitchell. The three of us are the folks that gave, and God willing will again give, Sunday tours for the congregation and visitors. But one other shout out I want to give to our dear friend John Matson, who was the leader of the tour guides for many years. He introduced me, Marilyn, and Rosella to the group, and now he's retired in California, but promised me he'd be watching. So hi, John, and thank you for all you've given us. Finally, a shout out to Colgate University, which you see I'm wearing. That's my alma mater, as it is the alma mater of our founding minister, Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick. So that's why I wore this in his honor. He's one of my heroes. So, to the matter at hand, which is talking about and showing you the art and architecture of this wonderful church, the Riverside Church. We are now filming in the second gallery of the church, which would be getting off the fourth floor on the tower elevators and walking down the steps. And as you can see, we have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful nave. It is built and is in a pure French Gothic style. It, as you can see, is very vertical. I mean, if we were down on the nave level, we'd be looking up and we'd see these large windows, the skeletal structure, ribbed vaults, pointed arches, all are what makes a cathedral Gothic. We're not a cathedral, but we are definitely Gothic in the 13th century French Gothic style. We have a three-part elevation. You may not be able to see the arcade, the aisles below. That's stage one. This area in between the arches and the windows is called the triforium. Why? Because that's what it's called. That's the definition of what it is. And finally, the large clear-story windows that bring in this ethereal light. And it's really quite a stunning interior space, often overlooked in New York City, but hopefully as the years go by, more and more people will know about us and come and share the space with us. What can I say more? These beautiful windows are actually replicas of windows in the cathedral that our architects were inspired by, the Great Chartres Cathedral in France. It is about an hour outside of Paris, and it's called the Queen of Cathedrals. It is the French Gothic cathedral with the most integrity because it was built in the shortest period of time. It has lasted through wars and destruction that have affected other cathedrals in France. And it's the mother lode. That's all I can say about that. I've been, I think, 5 times and look forward to 6 is a lucky number, perhaps. But this room does not give you the feeling that you get in Chartres. Chartres is a dark, mysterious, brooding place. At least I found it so. This, as beautiful as we are, this is really French Gothic, but it's processed through a tidy Protestant ethos. So it's very calm compared to what a true French Gothic cathedral would be, but beautiful nonetheless. But many of the parts of Chartres that our architects use. One of the most prominent are these clerestory windows. They are actual reproductions of clerestory windows in Chartres. We have 10, 5 on the west wall, 5 on the east. They're double lancets. The lancet window would be one with a pointed top. So they're double lancets with oculi or rose windows on top. So that would be considered one window. So there are 10, 5 on the west, 5 on the east. They were made in glass studios in the 1920s for us. One of the glass makers also made many windows for St. Patrick's Cathedral, one of the obviously high-end glass makers in the world. And that just segues to the fact that everything that is in this room and on the exterior were made by the highest end creators. The glass makers, the stone makers, the woodworkers, top of the line, and the best they could do for us.
Okay, so that's our little introduction. Now we're going to move to the PowerPoint. So I'm going to share that screen with you. Can you all see that?
Perfect.
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we just heard the little intro. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do a part video is we wanted to show Mace in the space. I think it's one thing to see it in photos and one thing to see, you know, in a video, and to have somebody standing there and you can see the proportions. So that's one of the reasons why. Let's see. Now what I'm gonna do is kick it over to Mace and let him start chatting about the details of the nave. So Mace, just let me know when you want me to hit next slide and I will mute myself. You take it from here.
Oh yeah, you can click to the next slide. That's just well, let me just say that this photo is makes clearer the 3-part elevation that is typical of French Gothic cathedrals, and so we can click to the next one. Well, here is one of the clerestory windows. It's the one that if you're in the second gallery, it's the one that's closest to you on the west wall. As I mentioned, double lancets with a rose atop them. And in the tours that I had been giving and will be giving, I spend a bit of time on these because you know, you're able to really see them close up from that, which unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, just in reality, the folks in the Middle Ages couldn't do. There were no galleries back then. But so this is, well, you can click to the next one, if you will. This is the saint that's closest to us, as far to the north as possible. It's St. Lawrence, the very, very much venerated saint in the Middle Ages. He was a bishop in pagan Rome, and the story goes that the pagan emperor wanted the church's money, whatever that was, and it was thought that since he was the treasurer, he had it to give. So the emperor told him, in 3 days, give me the riches of the church. Lawrence gave it away to the poor, the infirm, the aged, the needy, and told the emperor, well, here's the riches of the church, the people. And you can click to the next one, Diane, if you would. What happened next? There he is being martyred. This is right below his statuesque figure. He's being, as you can see, fried on the gridiron. You football fans must know a gridiron is not a football field, it is a barbecue grill, and there he is. being martyred. At the bottom, the bellows making the flames higher, being tortured. But a medieval kind of joke was he told his tormentors, well, the left side's done, you can turn me over now, just proving the power of faith and that he was unfailing in his faith. He is, in fact, he's the patron saint of many things, but he's actually the patron saint of cooks. No joke. Next one, Diane, if you would. Right next to him, the proto-martyr, Saint Stephen, who was martyred in the book of Acts. He's holding the Roman palm of victory, even though he's gone to glory. He was the first person to be martyred for the faith before any of the disciples, anyone. He was in the book of Acts stoned, and you can see below, you can click, Diane, if you would, just move on quickly. There he is being stoned. Supposedly Paul was one of his tormentors, but there you see him being martyred for the faith. And it's interesting that these two saints are side by side, because there was a medieval myth that they brought Stephen's relics from the Holy Land and moved them next to Lawrence, who was already there. And those two saints, there's a church in Rome now where their relics lay side by side. So in the Middle Ages, illuminated manuscripts, windows, sculpture, they're always side by side. So that just gives you a real sense of the medieval thought process. You can go on, Diane. Well, this is a photo of the south wall with bits of the west wall. And I was particular about wanting you to see this because Linda mentioned unseen spaces, the boiler room and whatever, but there are so many beautiful unseen spaces here. If you look to the right of the Christ and Majesty, you'll see a rose window. Thank you, Diane. I see you have the little pointer, wonderful. If you go immediately down from that window, going toward the street level, it is immediately above the main entrance of the church. Now, many of you might know that in most French Gothic cathedrals of the time, there were gigantic rose windows above the west entrance. You walk through the west entrance as you do in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine and look straight down the aisle, the center aisle to the east where the altar is. That's the way cathedrals are sited, the rising sun in the east where the altar is. But because of real estate issues, I mean, our church runs obviously from north to south, and so and the property that was immediately south of us when the church was built, we really didn't own it, so we couldn't have done it anyway. But they honor the rose window. There's one on the west, this one, which is the 10 Commandments. I don't know, Dan, if you can go to the next one, that shows it. Yeah, see, never noticed. Even back 40 years ago when I joined and people were, in the second gallery often for service, no one noticed them. They're like tucked away in corners. And so I said I was going to honor them today. This one is the 10 Commandments. So each, there's a rose, but a center rose, but around them are 10 segments that actually give physical representation to each of the commandments. For instance, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. I mean, I think you see Solomon looking over at Bathsheba taking a bath on the roof. And so, no one ever notices them. And if I don't, most probably no one does, but I wanted to honor them today. Thanks, Diane. You can move on. And here you see just briefly the East. This one is parables from the New Testament. This is the East. The East. It's an exact, same size as the one on the West Wall, and again, not noticed much. So we can move on. At least we've given them a little props today. Well, here we are looking at our Christ in Majesty, not original to the room. In 1930, it was not there. Right behind it, you see figures who were there. They are great preachers of Christianity, going to Augustine, Savonarola, Wesley. But on the far right, the final figure, Diane, everyone can see on the far right, right there, is one of the most contemporary of the great preachers. It's Phillips Brooks, who was the leader of the great Trinity Church in Boston, beautiful H.H. Richardson building. But he wrote O Little Town of Bethlehem. He was a powerful preacher. He was like a mega preacher preceding Dr. Fosdick. And so, the movement from early Christianity to almost the present is what those six preachers represent. I think we have better ones of Christ in Majesty. So Diane, you can click to the next one, hopefully. I hope I'm not going over time. Oh, and well, we'll get back to this, but this is the Madonna and Child by Sir Jacob Epstein, the creator of Christ in Majesty. I don't know, Diane, if you want to go back. But no, we'll just see this one. This was a gift to us, as was the original, as we see now, Christ in Majesty. Sir Jacob Epstein, New York Jew, moved to the UK and did great monumental works that are prized very much so in the UK and also other places around the world. This is a dupe, well, how can I say? The original of this piece is in the middle of a small Gothic, true Gothic, old Gothic nave outside of Cardiff, Wales. It suffered a lot of destruction in World War II, and when it was reconstructed and revitalized, they asked Sir Jacob to give them a
No sound.
I'm sorry, folks. Here I am. Can you hear me again? And so the original of this sits in aluminum in the center of the nave of Llangeff Cathedral in Wales. But Sir Jacob's widow donated the plaster cast, which created the original, to us. It was gilded in gold leaf and suspended, as you can see, from the ceiling. So the proportions are exactly the same. It's a very powerful piece. If you were to Google Christ in Majesty Epstein, there's a sermon written about it. There's lots of information about Sir Jacob, and you can forward again, Diane. I'm sorry. The other gift that was given to us is Madonna and Child, a very powerful piece in that very few, there's many Christs as an adult, many Christs as a baby, but not often Christ as a growing boy. And this one has obviously Asiatic influences. It's quite a powerful piece sitting in the back of our Garth, accessible always to anyone who has eyes to see. And, we're very blessed to have these two. There are many churches that would, salivate to get them, but we have them and we love them and we appreciate them. So you can click on. I hope I'm not talking too much. That's my problem, but what can I say? Next slide, Diane. Yeah. So yeah, the organ pipes. You can see them. on the south, on the east wall. Those are not original to the organ, but the organ has been reconfigured quite a few times over the years. But behind those exterior pipes are pipes behind the grillwork. And they were there in 1930. Now we have all the way down to the corner left there, we have the second organ console that we are blessed to have, because when the windows in the front of the chancel some years ago were being restored, we were able to have an organ. That organ plays the pipes only in the second gallery, but we didn't have to have an organ brought in to play. We were able to sing with our own organ. Moving on. Diane, see what's next here. Now we're in the narthex. Again, where there's narthex, it's the vestibule. It's it's a term to denote what we have. The entry part of the nave. Groined arches, quite beautiful and solemn. You can click, Diane. What we have here are some windows from the Flemish stained glass windows on the east wall above the steps as you come up. These, and you'll see later when we get into the nave, it's counterintuitive, but those windows from the 16th century are actually the oldest windows in the church. But actually, artistically, they look like the youngest, because when you get into the nave, or even when you saw the clerestory windows looking like the 13th century, they're made in the 20th. These are original 16th century. They were from a cathedral in Bourges, and they were hidden away for centuries, actually. When the French Revolution came and a lot of ecclesiastical art was being destroyed, the faithful took it upon themselves to protect lots of religious art. And when they were discovered in the, I think it was the late 19th, early 20th century, they were sold. Mr. Rockefeller, through an agent, I'm sure, purchased them. And in fact, where the chancel screen is in our nave, which we'll get to shortly, this is where, in our predecessor congregation, the Park Avenue Baptist Church, which is now Central Presbyterian, that's where these windows were. So when Riverside was built and we sold the church to the Presbyterians, we took these with us, because I think they still, I don't know how legally they were named, but they belonged, I think, to Mr. Rockefeller, I'm not sure. But so they were taken out of our old congregation and installed above, and they're quite beautiful. They're completely different style than the Gothic. They're three-dimensional with real concern. Yeah, thank you for the drapery of the figures. They're almost like tapestries or paintings, Dutch paintings of the period. And they're scenes from the life of Christ. They actually have English subtitles. So people say, well, if they're Flemish, how come there's all this English in them? Well, they were added in the UK before we got them, and they're really quite stunning. But quite different from the Gothic stained glass windows, which we'll get to very shortly. So we can move on, I think. Diane? Yeah, these, Diane wanted me to highlight, and I love to do it. These two angels are in the narthex. This first one is the physical church. This is an angel, not in the Gothic style. It's a really Renaissance style sculpture of an angel holding a cathedral in her hands. So she represents the physical church. And on the east wall, right above the Flemish stained glass, is the spiritual church. You see another angel with the cross in her left hand, and she's holding a chalice in her right. And again, you know, people just see them. I can't get in the mind. Even I do, because there they are every Sunday. But that, we want to give them a shout out. I think this is an evocation of in the Middle Ages they had two statues. Again, the spiritual church, and then they had the synagogue, and so they somehow transmorphed it into this. They're quite nice, standing on their pedestals. So moving on. Oh, okay. So
So
here
now,
I go again. More.
here you go again, Mace. We're going to play second video, which is Mace in the actual nave before we were on the second floor gallery. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and share that with you in a second. Oops. Just bear with me as I'm trying to toggle in this Zoom. Okay, share screen. Okay, can you all see this?
Perfect. Looks good.
Okay, great. And here we go.
So here we are on the main level, on the floor of the nave of Riverside Church. As I mentioned, very French Gothic in its effect, but something that's not very French Gothic are our proportions. Most Gothic cathedrals are very narrow and very tall. For instance, Chartres is one of the widest, if not the widest French Gothic cathedral. It's 64 feet wide. We're 85 feet wide. Our nave is 100 feet high. The nave in Chartres is 124 feet high. So very narrow and very tall. Most French Gothic cathedrals are, and sight lines and acoustics, as a result, are very poor. So this was a challenge, a problem for the architects, how to make a church where preaching would be highlighted, amenable to a congregation while they were sitting. So they were lucky, the architects and one of our ministerial staff. They were sent on a grand tour of France and Spain by Mr. Rockefeller, fully paid. And they looked, in fact, in the archival material, there's a writings of the architect about where they went, where they stayed, what spoke to them, what didn't. And fortunately, what spoke to them were cathedrals in southern France and northern Spain. I got it, there it is. They found cathedrals that were wider and with vaults that were lower. And so, in fact, if you can envision a typical French Gothic cathedral and you kind of squatted it down, you flattened it, the roof comes down, the rest goes out. So that's what we have, a more user-friendly building, in fact, where most everyone in this room has direct visual access to the pulpit, which would not be possible by any means. I mean, a Gothic cathedral, any cathedral, the function is to celebrate the Mass. You know, the sermon is a part of the service, but it's not central. But in a Baptist church, now interdenominational, preaching, of course, with Dr. Fosdick was central. So he vetoed putting the pulpit in the middle, but it's prominent to the left as we look forward. So it's really user-friendly. I mean, one of the real rock bottom things about Riverside is that science and religion were not in opposition. So that when we opened in 1930, we had air conditioning, we had anything modern that could help us to get through our life of the church. At the same time, Riverside was built, Temple Emmanuel, beautiful, beautiful. More humanly scaled, most are. Did not have central air conditioning, and they spent tens of millions of dollars in the last couple of decades to do what we did originally in 1930. So that gives you a sense of what our builders were all about. One thing I failed to mention upstairs which is really what makes us controversial architecturally, and that is the fact that we are a steel frame building. And as you see it, one of the parts of Gothic cathedral structures is flying buttresses. So when you see these columns on a real Gothic cathedral, there'd be a flying buttress on the outside holding up this wall and these walls. But we have a steel frame building. We're criticized quite vehemently by some architectural critics, especially a professor at Columbia who wrote a big article about it, saying, well, if you're building, what's the point? You're building with 20th century technology. Why are you facing it in this architectural style that's essentially gone out of style? But we were, Dr. Fosdick, Mr. Rockefeller, the building committee, the congregation didn't have much to do with it, actually. They were very comfortable. The Gothic style is nothing if it's not religious and ecclesiastical in its effect. And they firmly said, if you don't build it in Gothic, you're not, doing what you need to do. And so 90 years have gone by, and I think we've stood the test of time, and here we are.
Okay. So now,
So Diane, do you think, should I wait till the very end to take questions? Because these questions are popping up. Just get through it, and then what's your, because, hearing me incessantly is kind of, they're getting kind of, right? At least I am. So
you're natural. You're natural, and you're a pleasure to listen to. But I understand. I think you could take the questions as they come. As last time, we have the chat and the raising hand feature. So
yeah, see, I'm not so familiar with that because I see these questions popping up. I don't know if I should answer them now or wait till the end.
Let's go for it. So we have one from the chat from Caroline, and then we have Doug Miller who's raised a hand. So you can address the questions. So the question from Caroline, do you see it, Mace?
I should click on chat. Yeah, no.
I can read it to you if you'd like. Would you please explain again why Fosdick did not want the pulpit situated in the middle?
Well, I can't put myself in his brain. But my opinion is that, he had humility, that the church is about Jesus Christ, not him. And so he had his pulpit elevated. And I just think, I don't think Riverside would be Riverside with the pulpit stuck in the middle of the chancel. It's unimaginable to me, and I think perhaps it was unimaginable to him. I don't know if that answers the question, but I just don't think, he felt he was the center, like it's all about me, because that's not the type of man that he was. So I don't know. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, great.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
And then we had,
Okay.
I believe, Doug Miller. I think you raised your hand, and then Eugene was after that. So if you want to unmute yourself and you can ask directly, that would be great.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks, Mace, for this really, really great introduction to the stained glass windows. I learned a lot. I just want to let our listeners know that the building committee is looking to repair some of our stained glass windows that's around the church. We have found out that they are desperately in need of repair. So I just want to let you know that we are preserving the stained glass windows that are giving us and beautifying our church. And thank you for this well-known introduction to the stained glass windows.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you very much. Can you folks hear me? Just a side note. Some years ago, I had, because Doug, I know, is working on that, and he knows the figures, the millions and millions it's going to cost. But imagine this, Doug, and folks, in the 1920s, when the windows were being constructed for us, the one clear-story window, a double lancet with the rose, cost $6,529.88. Can you imagine? Imagine what it's going to cost to repair that. It's mind-boggling. But thank God we have the funds to do it. So thank you. Any other questions that I'm not?
I saw another hand raised.
Yeah, it was Desiree here on Eugene's screen.
Okay, great.
Oh, hi, Desiree.
Hi, how are you, Mace?
Good.
On the question of why the pulpit wasn't in the center, that is also, it's for liturgical reasons, and it would make sense that Fosdick would want it. The host, the communion elements were always supposed to be at the center of worship. So that's why they altered our vision straight to the altar there should always be clear. Our eyes should always be directed to the cross, and then the pulpits would be on the sides. So it would indeed,
yes.
That would be the humility that Mace was talking about. It was like our eyes should always be focused on that.
Okay, well, Penelope wants me to go through the architecture before questions, so let's get back to it. And thank you. I appreciate your questions. And so take it away, Diane, take it away.
I'm going to mute myself, but again, please raise your hand or do the chat feature, and as we go, we'll try to address them. So take it away, Mace. Mace, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, dear. I'm sorry. Folks, this is a photo, a beautiful photo of the interior of Chartres Cathedral. Again, to me, you don't really get a Riverside sense there. It's well lit with lighting of the time, but back in the Middle Ages, the only light besides candles was coming through the windows. And so it was a completely different experience. But what we see prominently in the front is the famous Chartres labyrinth. When people think of labyrinths, we often think immediately of this labyrinth. Well, many cathedrals, Gothic and otherwise, had labyrinths, and they weren't all in this form. But it's I laugh and say it's unfortunate that Chart couldn't have copyrighted this because they wouldn't need as much money from the French government to keep them going. But it inspired our architects, and those in the know and in Riverside Pictures will see that our mini version in the chancel is a really another homage to Chart, and that's all I'll say about that. I'm not sure why. Yeah, this one we can stop. Yeah, go back to the diagram if you would, Diane. This one, yeah. See, if you folks, you know, this is a small version of the diagram of the windows. You know, showing the clear story windows, the aisle windows, and we call them the apse windows, or the windows in the front of the church. My real joy is the aisle windows that are accessible to anyone in the nave. The apse windows at the very top are more traditional, and actually I need binoculars to see them, so I'm not going to talk much about them. But they're the ones, except to say, they are the ones that Riversiders will remember that were restored 5 or so years ago when we had that scaffolding above the choir and the organ. But all the windows, if you had a chart like this, you could see who they are, what they are, and we'll move on. Now this, we're getting to the aisle windows. This one is the very first one on the west wall as you enter. It's the one that's really most like a window in a cathedral, and I'll mention that in a minute. But just a bit of information about vital statistics. So each is about 7 feet wide, about 19 feet high, about 9 feet from the floor. Each of them has about 7,000 pieces of glass in each window. These are medallion windows, which are, as you can see, geometric shapes surrounded by ornament with a predominance of red and blue. Now there, you can Google the term Chart blue, because there's there is a consensus among art historians that there's a special blue that is in the windows at Chart that is just so out of this world that it's worldwide in its notoriety. And our glassmakers attempted to reproduce it. Mixed results, to say the least, but still quite beautiful, and it's a beautiful blue. This one is the agriculture window, and I in my tours, it's really kind of small. I can't really give a spiel, which is kind of good, but it tells, the windows in Gothic cathedrals tell stories, and this window tells a story. And when we get back in business, and I was talking to Diane about it. She said, give them a promo. That, I've been working on a guide to the aisle windows, and I really had wanted, after the celebrations, to give some tours of simply the windows on the aisles, showing people what's in them and how, really wonderful they are. We'll get to see a few little highlights right now. But as you can see, if we had right next to it a window from Boers or Chart, you'd be hard pressed to tell whether our windows came from there or their windows came from us. Not talking about the subject matter, but the style and the way they're created. So move on.
I just want to say, I see, Doug, you have a hand raised. Is that from the last time, or do you have something you want to ask?
No, that was from the last time.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure I got you, just in case.
Yeah, you want to go back a minute to the other one. This is, if you would, this is the how we got our Bible window. And all the tour guides from the beginning until now always stop here because of a real reason. And the reason, I could talk a half hour about this window alone. Luckily, I won't for your sake. But at the very bottom, very, very bottom, relates to the church school who was consulted because they were learning their Bibles at that time. And their contribution was, God is love, the verse from John. So Diane, let's do it. Let's start right here. God is love in English. Going up, we see God is love in Arabic. Going to the middle of the down and over, down, 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 straight down, right here. Yeah, there is God is love in Old Russian. Moving to the left, we have, and bottom, God is love in German. Moving again all the way to the left, to the very outer shell, God is love in Chinese, going vertically. And also moving up, God is love in Latin. So this is just a little thumbnail of a lot of stuff going on in this window. And it's really, just to give you a sense, they're just overflowing with detail and color and beauty. And, we're blessed to have them. And in time, those who are interested will get to see them close up. You can move on, dear, if you would. This is the top of the very top of the state and government window. And I, just to give you a sense of the forward-looking, well, not really forward-looking, but just acknowledging, high points in American history. If we look at this from the start, from the bottom left, we see the Magna Carta with King John giving up rights to the feudal lords. Going to the right, we see the Mayflower Compact. We see the pilgrims with their hats and the ship up top. Going to the top left, we see the Declaration of Independence. And to the right, we see the Emancipation Proclamation. The chains of slavery, you will note, have been broken. You see 1863 there. You see the formerly slave father reaching out to his young son, the mother with babe in arms. There were folks, probably elderly folks, who had lived through the Civil War. The Rockefeller family, very, very, very involved in civil rights and abolitionist issues. John Dee's mother, Laura Spelman Rockefeller, was in Ohio. Her family home was a stop on the Underground Railroad. I mean, John Dee's father, senior, gave a lot of funds to an African-American girls' school, and they renamed it Spelman College, the most prestigious academically of the African-American colleges. So their connection to that is very strong and very deep. And so many of the symbols and people elevated in this church were, you say, why is he there? Well, he was an abolitionist, if you read his history. I'm just saying in general. So we'll move on. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Here we go. This is something, I feel sometimes like I'm Sherlock Holmes, like Sherlock Mace here. This room gives me such joy. I'm going to share some. This one really blew me away because I really found the answer. Sometimes you see things, or I see things, and I'll say, how did that get here? Because this is a medallion in the Christ and Humanity window. And in the very center there, you see the temptation of Christ. And for years, I looked and I looked and I looked at this, and I said, this looks familiar to me. I said, this doesn't look really like a Gothic medallion. It looks like a picture. And in fact, it is, because it's really a stained glass evocation of a very, very famous piece of art, which is now in the Frick Museum. So if we click to the next slide, this is a picture of a Duccio, painted in 1308, of the temptation of Christ. And it's in the Frick Gallery right now because in 1927, I think, the Frick Board of Trustees purchased this along with one other painting for like $500,000. I won't go in because Diane could spend a half hour telling you about the importance of this. So look at this, and we'll just go back to the other one and the window, Diane. Just this is, and so it really is a stained glass version of this very, 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 very famous picture. One of the Frick's most valuable pieces of art. Do the math. I was gonna transcribe $500,027 to what it would be now, but I didn't have a chance. Bottom line, I went to the New York Times in their time capsule, whatever, to find the article. It was a front page article when they bought it. But the punchline is at the bottom of the article, they listed the members of the Board of Trustees of the Frick. Lo and behold, J.D. Jr. was one of them. So I'm sure and I'm convinced that this is why this medallion is, and it just, I said, hooray, I was really thrilled because I really think, I could just imagine him thinking, oh, wow, what a beautiful picture. And they looked at it and surveyed it. He said, I want that for my church. And so therefore we have it. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Moving on. Any questions? Okay, let's move on. Oh, and finally, very important. This is always moving. I never fail to mention the top of the international window, which honors other religious traditions. So if we look at the window, we see in the center a big circle. That is a traditional version of the heavenly Jerusalem. You know, 4 gates in the east, I'm not going to sing, but 12 gates to the city, the heavenly city, Jerusalem. But surrounding that circle, if we go down to the bottom, Diane, to the right, we see, actually, this is a very famous scene. It's the beginning of Taoism. The prophet had been preaching for 40 years and he was leaving. He was leaving China to go, I guess, to Tibet, wherever. And the gatekeeper, very famous story, the gatekeeper told him, well, before you leave, I want you to write it down, which he did. And there he is presenting the book of Tao to the gatekeeper, very famous story. Moving to the left, we see the Confucius with his disciples. Moving up, we see the Buddha with a disciple, and moving most prominently to the right, the Prophet Muhammad, if you can believe it. This again is the mid-20s, but today, even in the mid-20s, but it was a different world, this is sacrilegious. The Muslims do not show, especially in their mosques, any graven images. No, not even an animal, not a person. You see beautiful calligraphy, mosaics, but you don't see any people, far less the prophet. But there he is. Not only is he there, he's on the front of our facade, on the west facade of the church. And so it just gives me a message that our creators, and there are other places in the church that are even just as powerful in that, you know, the narrow, I will say narrow denominational presentation of Christianity, Baptist, you know, is very small, very, you know, this is very large. Our creators knew that God is expressed in very different and large ways. So thank you. I could babble on, but you get it, I'm sure. So moving on, Diane, anything else? I think that's it, right? Can I shut up? Oh, no, not quite yet. This is the pulpit. 9 tons of Indiana limestone. The church, by the way, is faced inside and out with Indiana limestone, but we have minor prophets with canopies above. Moving on, Diane. These are some of the canopies that actually, the canopies give homage to some of the cathedrals that the architects visited. This final one to the right is Chartres Cathedral, and our tower is actually modeled on the simplicity of the earliest of the Chartres towers. So if you really look at this and look at the tower from a distance, you'll see the similarities. Moving on. Moving on, if we would, Diane. There is on the left the famous gargoyle in Notre Dame of Paris. That's something I should mention, that, you know, everyone says Notre Dame. Well, it's Notre Dame of Paris. It's Notre Dame of Chartres. It's Notre Dame. Now, Our Lady, there's at least a dozen cathedrals in France that are Notre Dame. So everyone thinks of Notre Dame as the church, but it's Notre Dame of Paris. And that's a motif from the facade of that sad church right now, but there will be a resurrection story, I'm sure. So moving on. Well, this is the choir rail. There are these, you know, when you see 4 things like that in closing a subject, they're quatrefoils of different subject matter. Each symbolizes a religious interest. This you see Moses with the 10 Commandments. That's ministry. Moving on. There you see prophecy. It's Isaiah with the lion and the lamb. Beautiful carvings. These were done by, and we'll talk about them in a minute, the Piccirilli brothers. Moving on, Diana. I keep calling you Diana. This is obviously the Last Supper. How can I say it? Anyway, moving on. That's obviously the Last Supper, and that's creation. The you know, that's more like the Sistine Chapel with the flowing hair of God touching Adam, bringing him to life. Moving on. That's marriage. I laughed with Diana. I said, we have to redo that with 2 men. But no, I'm kidding. But beautiful, so many beautiful carvings. Okay, let's see. And that's the Ark of the Covenant, obviously. Well, if not obviously, it's the Old Testament. Well, we're about to go into the chancel, and this is just a diagram. I mean, there's so much going on in the chancel that our chancel creators actually has a guide. There are over 270 little highlights there. You could spend days just looking at different things and finding out, well, what is that? Oh, that's what that is. What is this? What is that? And it's unbelievable, the profusion of stuff. So moving on. Yeah, this is the rail above the, you know, the woodwork above the, you know, right to the left of the carvings we just saw. Beautiful carvings, the best craftsmen of the time. Moving on. Yeah, see, this is one just to give you a sense of the detail. If you look at this astronomer looking into the heavens, look at the ball above, and you actually see little signs of the zodiac. These are less than an inch. That just gives you a sense of the detail. The signs of the zodiac that the astronomer is looking at in the night sky. Beautiful, just, and again, unnoted, they're all there, and God knows that they're here for anyone to see. And in time, I'm an optimist. Those who have an interest will get to see them. So moving on. This, you see it to the left, St. George slaying the dragon. And to the right of it, you see a modern, perhaps, evocation of a dragon, a dinosaur. So I mean, the intense thought that, it's not like, oh, we'll put a dragon in. They really thought it through, and what a job! If I could go back in time, I'd love to have been on the committee that was involved in all this. It would have, it's, as I say, my sweet spot. So moving on. Well, this is what's known as a misericord. It's very interesting. That's a choir stall that's been pushed back. We have them under, and many of them are carved. If you look there, you see obviously the nativity happening, but these misericords were used in the Middle Ages by infirm or aged monks or pastors who had to stand for hour after hour on during the mass and these rites. And so you were considered standing if you were leaning your bottom against that thing there. And so they were called misericords. They are called misericords. And the Latin misericord from mercy. So it's really a mercy seat. And they're all over cathedrals in Europe. You'll see them. In fact, there are a few in the cloisters. Why do we have them? Because we can and we could afford them. And they're really quite beautiful. But again, unless someone like me lifts them up, no one would know they were there. Moving on. Thank you, Diane. There's our labyrinth, and you can note the similarities, the circular, labyrinth, where you start at the bottom there, you see the entrance, and it's, not like the labyrinth and, you think of an English country garden or a maze where you get lost and you have to retrace. If you stay on the path, you get to the center. I was, or I have been blessed, I was blessed to have walked the short labyrinth, because when you go there normally it's covered by chairs, but if you really want to go and see it, you can go online and find out. One day a week they take the chairs off, and it was really a very special thing for me. But this is, again, Riverside's creators giving homage to Chartres. Next. Well, here we are at the chancel screen. These are old photos from our archives. There they are again. They're really quite, there's 7 sections. As you can see, they're titled. I needn't say what they are, but, the combination of people from history, the Bible, and human history. I mean, in the physician screen, the first one on the left, you see St. Luke's, all the St. Luke's hospitals in the world. He was mentioned in the Bible as the blessed physician, but you have Lister, you have, Koch, who, the person who discovered anthrax, just scientists that were, the messages that modern scientists who save thousands, if not millions, millions of lives, are just as sacred as biblical preachers and teachers. And so, not to go through a lot, there's a guide. Again, this would take a half a day to go through them, and I don't have them. Here is the most famous part. One of the most famous parts is Abraham Lincoln, and I always laugh and say Booker T. Washington on the left as we look is to the left and right. No, yeah, right there. There's Booker T. I would say he's always in the shadow of of Lincoln, because when you go there, he is always in the shadow. But if we move to the right, the other person, the other man on the other side of Lincoln is General Armstrong, who was a Civil War general. But the reason he's there is that he was one of the founders, the major founder of the Hampton Institute, which was obviously an African-American school. It's now Hampton University. But that's the part of the chancel screen that upholds African-Americans and civil rights. And Marilyn Mitchell, I know that your son's a Hampton man. I always say that. Yay. Hi, Nick. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. We're getting there, folks. We really are getting there. And there we see, this is the missionary screen. Down at the bottom left, you see two large figures. The first one is St. Paul. Oh, there we are. Thank you. And there you see him. He's very much St. Paul. He's a person losing his hair with a long beard, and he's holding a sword. Those are his symbols. Why? The sword, he and Peter, it's said to have been both martyred on the same day in Rome. Peter was hung, and he said, I don't want to be, he was crucified on an upside down cross because he didn't want to die. He said, I'm not worthy to die in the way Christ died, turn the cross upside down. So when you see an upside down cross, it's him. But the sword is Paul because he, lucky him, was a Roman citizen. So he was able to be decapitated and he didn't have to suffer. So that's why the sword is his attribute. But next to him is Dr. Livingston, I presume. So, he was, especially at the time, the great African missionary. And so in iconography, the size of the figure denotes the importance in many cases. And so this, I think they're saying, Livingston was so instrumental in converting a lot of African folk that he deserves a place of prominence next to Paul. So moving on. Oh, there's Christ and the artists. So you see Christ is central and in all the screens, may not be the largest, but on each side of him are Leonardo and Michelangelo. You see, Palestrina's there and Fra Angelico. But on the far right, you see Bach with his baton at the very edge. And so you'll see, and I'm not quite sure where he is, but you'll see Whittier, Greenleaf Whittier, a poet, and you say, well, why isn't Walt Whitman there? Why? There's a lot of people. Well, Whittier was an abolitionist who fought for against slavery, and that's why he's there. So the mindset of the creators is not like, oh, he was the greatest, let's put him there. He had to have some connection to the spirit-filled life, I think. So is that it, I think, for the screen? What's next? Yeah, well, there's our reading desk. A lot of, especially foreigners, might ask me, what is that? Is that the American eagle? What is that doing there? Well, it's really St. John. The symbol of St. John is the eagle. And that's the reading desk. So even in Christ Chapel, there's a reading desk and there's an eagle. So that, if you wonder, well, why an eagle? The evangelists each have a symbol. Matthew is the winged man. Mark is the winged lion. Luke is the winged ox. And John is the eagle. So when you see those figures, you know, and I will move on, but they're all over the church. They're really, well, yeah, moving on. Thank you, Diane. These are the Jeremiah capitals that are on the top of the pillars throughout the church. These are what are called historiated capitals, where their stories are told. This is on these capitals, there's the story of Jeremiah. And so, not to spend a lot of time, Dr. Fosdick loved Jeremiah. In fact, he taught Jeremiah at Union for many, many years. He felt he was the closest to Christ in his eminence. And so again, there's the potter's vessel you can kind of see there. And there's a guide to them, but they're very, you know, Vince with his fabulous camera, and thank you, Vince, by the way, for these fabulous photos. He was able to zoom in on this. But if you don't have a zoom and get them lit, this is one of the best spots, but they're not really able to be seen and studied, but they're there. So moving on. Yay, oh.
So nice, not off the hook. I've been privately chatting through.
I'm sorry, folks. I hope you're enjoying it.
There's another.
I hope you're not saying.
Sorry, there's
Yeah,
another class at 2:30, so we have 10 minutes left, and I think we could just skip the video and then just go straight to the rest of the slides for Christ Chapel. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, thank you. Cool. I think that's great.
Great.
Oh, why'd you do that one first? That was supposed to be the end. Well, there Dennis and I are standing.
It's the best photo
So anyway,
on the whole PowerPoint.
Yeah, anyhow, that was at our wedding. What a blessing to have been married in that space. Anyway, moving on. I was saving that for the end, but these are the brass doors. Unfortunately, they were painted by someone, but they're crinkling. But these there are 12 quatrefoils on each side, each one representing one of the 12 apostles. So we'll just move on. Time is of the essence, so let's get inside. There it is, very, very Romanesque. The creators wanted to give the impression of 11th century Romanesque. So you have a barrel roof instead of a skeletal Gothic roof. The Romanesque walls are very thick and windows are much smaller because the walls had to be held up with brick instead of flying buttresses. And so that's what they wanted to invoke here. Moving on. Yeah, that's the one I want you to show first. That's behind the baptismal pool. You know, Italian marble pillars, beautiful sculptures above. You see the Last Supper at the bottom there, and above you see the Transfiguration, excuse me. You see God, Christ in the middle, down in the middle here, yeah. Down, down, down. So you see God, Christ with Moses and Elijah and Peter, James, and John are in the outskirts. And you see Christ, the Good Shepherd. Just beautiful work. There's even in this room, nothing is decorative, but everything has a meaning. Moving on. And I guess, yeah, that's the top, the Christ the Good Shepherd. So we'll move on because there may be some questions. And, you know, as I say, everything has a meaning. We're not going to go through all that. And there's our beautiful, beautiful organ on the west wall of Christ Chapel. And it's just out of this world. I haven't been able, I'm going to go in one of these days, bug Diane to find out if she can go and if we can go in the archives and find out what kind of wood that is, because a lot of people ask, but I don't know. But whatever kind it is, it's stunning, and the carvings are just as stunning. Moving on. Yeah, there's those apocalyptic beasts again. There's our eagle. These are the buttresses of the organ. there's the eagle, and there's the winged, beautiful winged ox. That's Luke. And there's the lion and the winged man. But again, just look at that detail of the carvings, even above them. You know, Dr. Fosdick said that Mr. Rockefeller loved this building into existence, and it shows. You know, when he was very, very particular. He didn't just throw money at it. He got involved, and you know, he learned his lessons with Riverside, because when he got to Rockefeller Center, he was very, very involved. So moving on. I think that's it. Well, the Hoffman paintings, Christ in Majesty, I'm sorry, Christ in Gethsemane, and priceless, what can we say? In what we now call Gethsemane Chapel. It's painted by him in the 1880s. Beautiful, what can I say? We've all seen, I'm sure everyone, especially who are Riversiders, have seen it. There's the other one, Christ with the Elders. These are the ones that are behind closed doors in the assembly hall. Moving on. There it is at a close-up. And Christ and the rich young ruler, just so powerful. Christ is showing the rich young ruler these, you know, these obviously Matthew 25 people that need help. And just really, you know, and just so powerful. What can I say? I like this one better than Gethsemane, I confess. Okay, moving on. Finally, Christ's image. As Riversiders would know, there are copies of these that are in the South Hall lobby that the Mormons made for us, because we lent our Hoffman painting. There's no one that loves Hoffman more than me than the Mormons. Very Aryan, they paid to restore our Hoffmans and made us wonderful reproductions that we can show without fear of damage. And so thank you, Mormons, and thank you, Hoffman, and let's move on. I think that's it. Is that it? Yay, end of slideshow. So, you know, we're running out of time. So are there any questions? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I talked too much. But I hope you know.
This was perfect. I as an observer myself, and for this class, this was absolutely perfect. I thought so. It was so informative, and I think everything you've talked about shows just how much detail it is in our church, and how impossible it is to cover it in like one session, even in an entire day.
Yes. But how much time do we have? We're done?
3 minutes. So if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, because I just want to engage at least. I don't want to just give. I want to engage. Any questions?
I just want to say thank you, Mace. I mean, speaking as a quote old member who sat up in the chancel a million times, walked past these sculptures and carvings day by day, and just to really get a nice I can't wait to get back to this church and have you give me a personal tour. I mean, it's just the history and the thought that went into this construction of this building. Thank you so much. Thank you for your knowledge and your love for this church, because that's what keeps you inspired, and that inspired us all. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
I think Linda Lewis, you raised your hand if you want to quickly ask a question or make a comment.
Okay. Thank you, Mace, for a wonderful tour. You're the best. What is the building behind you?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Is that Chartres? Because I visited Chartres many years ago. Is that Chartres?
This is a model that I built. So, yeah, I had it there to give me inspiration. But
yeah,
thank you for mentioning it.
Oh, you're welcome, because I remember driving towards it, and no matter how far you were, the towers were so visible. And then to actually go in to see it, it was amazing.
It is amazing.
This
is the tower that This one.
That was the
This
one
is
that
the
I
tower.
saw first, that one, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that, what do you call it? Inspired the architects of our
Yeah.
tower. Thank you so much for mentioning it. It is
Yeah.
now, it's perfect because I had put it there. And then when this thing ended, I'd say, oh, I didn't talk about my model, but you got me to.
Well,
Thank you, Linda.
now you have, very good.
So everyone, thank you for putting up with me. I always laugh and say, I'm like a faucet. You better have a plumber on robocall to fix that when you can't turn it off. But anyway, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. You've already made mine.